Thanks for joining the Prosperous Sellers Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Yates, CEO of Prime Guidance, and I've got Matt Kostan from Product Opinion with me today. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you on. I know I've heard a lot of amazing things about your testing and other things. I know you've been a seller for a long time and probably have a lot to share. So why don't you give the audience a little update on who you are and what Product Opinion is?
Yeah, totally. So Matt's been selling we were talking about this earlier, but we were saying before it was cool. So plus 10 years ago. And something that I've always been obsessed with is just how do I make something that really resonates with people, right? Because there's a lot of product out there. And I got into not just selling on Amazon, but also creating Kickstarters where you basically create a product in front of an audience and have them kind of steer the ship, so to speak, and tell you what you want. And after having a few successful Kickstarters, it got me thinking, well, what if I could bring this to Amazon sellers as well and start testing and start using actual consumer feedback to not just make better products, but also make the listings that they have better and actually get more sales. So that's where the idea of Product Opinion came to be. And what it does is basically allow sellers to get real shopper feedback to increase their sales, because ultimately that's the biggest goal.
Mm-hmm. No, it's so important because we've seen it time and time again that, just a simple change to a main image or something that increases your click-through rate and increases your conversion rate on other elements can really go a long way. It can be a huge game changer. So what does that look like? How do you guys deploy that?
Yeah, so we do a few things. We do a few things differently. So one thing, one big differentiator is that we're consciously focused on Amazon sellers. So we are platform agnostic. You can use testing for, you can test pretty much anything, even like a Shopify site, for example. But we just because of our experience, we wanted to kind of lean into that. Something that's very interesting that I find super helpful is the ability to actually watch shoppers shop. So you can actually see someone navigate your listing or a search result or even a competitor's listing, and then they tell you what they think. So you're basically like reading their mind. They know they're being recorded, right? And they're answering your questions out loud. So it's not as creepy as it sounds. But you're basically getting an actual understanding, like a qualitative understanding of what makes them tick. And you hear, what they love, what they hate, and you get the context behind behind their feedback. And a lot of sellers have never done something like that, right? It's almost like a focus group, but in this way, it's much more scalable, much more affordable, and you still get the same kind of like passion behind it as well, which is really important.
Yeah, awesome. I know some of those like really expensive ones do like eye tracking and stuff. Have you found that by watching their face, you can tell a lot of what they're like, what elements they're looking at, and kind of can get opinions that they're not even sharing with you just based on their visual representation?
Yeah, the eye tracking is interesting. What I like though is we actually record their screen, so we actually can see their cursor, so we know exactly where they're going. Interestingly enough, a lot of people also will kind of like put the cursor where they're reading, right? And in this instance, you can actually see how they're clicking too. So one cool use case, there was a brand that was basically selling some eyelash cleanser, and they were actually losing, like sales were going down. They're trying to figure out like what's going on. And we did this search simulation, or sorry, we did actually just a native Amazon search. So we sent shoppers to eyelash cleanser, whatever the main keyword was. So now shoppers are looking, they're browsing, and we basically asked them, which one on the search result page would you click into and why? And a lot of shoppers were actually clicking into a new competitor of theirs, not even because of the main image, but because of in the title, it said vegan and cruelty free. And the interesting thing is, for an eyelash cleanser, you wouldn't think vegan and cruelty-free would necessarily, I mean, for cosmetics in general, sure, but you wouldn't think that's such a trigger. But what was interesting is people were clicking into that just for the vegan and cruelty-free. If you did just regular keyword research, you would never understand vegan and cruelty-free as being any kind of volume, right? You wouldn't go after that. It's not instinctive. Yeah. But watching people and how they're like, you could hear them light up. They're like, oh, that's vegan and cruelty-free. I'm going into that one. And that made a huge difference in, they were able to add that as well too, because their product was vegan and cruelty-free as well. And it made a huge difference going forward in their click rates and their conversion.
That was a good example because, like you said, even the best of the pros, with really advanced keyword research and stuff, they're not going to find that tactic unless you really understand your customer. And one way to understand your customer is watching how they behave and what interests them, right? I mean, that is that's a missing piece, I think, in a lot of brands. They don't pay enough attention to why is my competitor succeeding and what is my customer persona? How do I appeal to that persona more? Because if you know that 50% of your business is coming from one individual persona, then you really want to customize every element, the look, the feel, the personality in your text, in your videos, etc., to really target that audience and help them resonate with something. People like to buy something that really they feel good about, right? Something that they feel connected to.
And I'd say too, the best copy, so the best written text that you can put on your bullet points. Some title is more scientific, but say even for your bullet points, is basically mimicking the words and basically speaking in your customer's language, right? So a lot of times sellers, they try to make everything either so prim and proper when a shopper's reading it, it automatically goes to their like advertising spam brain, like, oh yeah, this guy's just trying to sell me whatever. But the best copy, in my opinion, is the one that's a little bit more fun, a little bit more playful. It evokes emotion. Make a joke in your bullet points if you can do that. And when you actually hear how shoppers speak, it lets you actually do that. You actually hear what they would say. An example of this was I was developing another product, a passport holder, and one of the key features was to have a what's it called? Those tracker devices from Apple, an AirTag basically embedded in it. Most of the competitors, or I'd say all of the competitors, had the little leather bump for the AirTag on the outside. And some of the feedback was, oh, I hate that. It stands out like a sore thumb, right? I'm like, oh, okay. I'm going to make mine so that it's inside, it's covered, and then I'm going to use that language in the copy as well too. So now my bullet point is something to the effect of, hidden AirTag holder, which in of itself is kind of a cool feature, won't stand out like a sore thumb, that type of thing. So you're just using the same language that people are thinking in their head. You connect better, and they're more likely to convert because of it.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that, what you mentioned was not only looking at competitors, but dissecting their reviews to understand what do the customers say about the product and how can I better it, which I love. Just a food for thought. I use AirTags in my luggage when I travel, and I actually put them in the liner so that you can't find them. And I think hidden is a good catchphrase because people, they want it to go unnoticed. If someone's going to take off with your bag, you want to make sure that it's not the first thing they're thinking is let me rip this thing off. It's inconspicuous. You mentioned a couple other examples earlier that I thought were also amazing. So why don't you give a couple more examples of some testing that you've learned that just really was maybe surprising or might be interesting to the audience?
Yeah, so another really good example of using, we call them pinion videos, right? So that video feedback. So the biggest thing as a brand creator, or even if, or brand owner, you work with the products day in, day out, right? So you develop these blinders, right? You have what's called the curse of knowledge. So you don't see things with a fresh pair of eyes day to day. And I feel like a lot of brand owners don't realize that, shoppers are seeing and discovering your product for the first time. And one big conversion killer is any kind of confusion on the product detail page. Like in some cases, you almost want to not even mention a feature if it's very confusing in your first few images, and maybe save it for the A+ for those, for those browsers that want the more detail. A really interesting example for this was one brand we work with. She had a really cool shower cap, and it was patented, and it had a whole bunch of features. And I mean, you wouldn't even think for a shower cap you could even get all these features for a shower cap. But one of the features and one of the infographics was basically like, hey, it's reversible. Now, if we pause for a moment, why would we want a shower cap to be reversible?
His and hers? I don't know.
Right? Like, right. Maybe his and hers. Yeah. Right. Like, but when you think about it, it's like, wait, why would I want to put moisture in? And it was actually a really big point of confusion. We ran a bunch of opinion videos. Shoppers had the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, this looks cool, but like, yeah, wait, what? This doesn't make any sense. And the issue is, once a shopper's confused, like we know this, they're very happy to hit the back button and look at the other 10,000 results, right? So in this particular instance, a reversible shower cap is so that you can actually leave in treatments. So if you want to put stuff in your hair and leave it to soak or whatever it does, it's a feature, right? And she was able to, she upgraded or updated that infographic to be very specific about the leave-in treatments, and she saw an immediate increase in conversion rate when she did that, because we weren't confusing people anymore, right? So just another cool example of how to like overcome and actually see things with a fresh pair of eyes.
And the confusing point, I think, is very valuable, because if you have a product that is too technical or too confusing to the consumer, you need to get them to the point where the customer can make that purchase decision really timely, but yet still give the breadth of information. So putting the information where it is best suited, like you said, the A+ content, if it needs a lot more insight, I think is really key, because the consumer gets fatigued. They're like, oh, there's too much to absorb. I don't understand it. So they're going to hit the back button. And that's the default, is you've got to figure out, how do I keep them from hitting that back button every which way you can? So the content optimization is one, and then also like a comparison chart in your A+ content. If there's multiple products you sell and the one they landed on is not the right fit, you've got to make sure that the other alternatives are shown there that may be appealing. We like to do a combination of similar items and then also kind of related items in part of that comparison chart. So you're kind of appealing to both of those customers. But that's something that I think a lot of products that are more technical in nature, they don't execute well.
Yeah, and a good example of a brand that does it really well, I mean, we all know Anchor, and Anchor actually does do a lot of consumer feedback and research through like Facebook groups. They do polls. Obviously, they do a lot of giveaways as well too for new products. But looking at their strategy, I mean, their main bread and butter are those battery products, and and what they do really well is they basically uncover like, what are the main things that shoppers care about, and usually it's like speed of charging and capacity. That's it. Like, that's like top two. And if you actually look at their product detail pages, that's what they highlight. And literally it's like one heading, fast charging, and the next heading for, high capacity, you can charge, your phone 10 times or whatever it is. But they're very succinct, even though it's a technical product, they could go into the wattage and the details of this, that, and the types of charging and whatever. And they do that later. For those first few images, it's very clear, very easy, very digestible. So they're not going to lose people on the technical side.
I'm glad you brought up Anchor because it's one of the brands that I respect the most on Amazon, and I constantly tell our clients, let's look at how an Anchor example is, and let's make sure no matter what category you're in, you're setting the bar high, and you're trying to compete against or visually compete against the best of the best, not just who's the best in my category. I think a lot of times sellers don't set the bar high enough, and some of the points you made, I think Anchor, they figured out that when they started selling, I've been kind of following them since the very beginning.
Same,
And
yeah.
when they started out, there was a whole bunch of battery banks that would say 20,000 milliamp, and they would have all the specs, but the customers didn't resonate with that. So they took an Apple-like approach and said, we are going to make it real simple. This is how many times you'll charge your phone, and give you multiple examples of that. This is how portable it is. Even on their images, they'll show you multiple perspectives, like laying on a table next to your phone and your laptop, and so you can see size and scope, and they just break it down into real simple terms and headline messages that are resonate on mobile, which I think is super important. But then they'll still get into the specs, like you said, at the right place. So even whether it's a subline or additional like graphics on as part of the image, or particularly the A plus content, now you can really get into the weeds for those that want it. But you don't need that. A couple flicks of an image of the images tell you everything you need to know, and boom, you can make that purchase. To me, that's super critical.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, no, I've been a big fan of Anchor as well, and I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're the best at like reducing that cognitive load just to get people like bought in, and then get the conversion from all their pages. So yeah, a really good example to use when you're trying to like benchmark, regardless of what category you're selling in.
And one of the things that they did was they realized everyone else had a standard warranty and people didn't trust them. They added a longer warranty to give more trust, and they would even dissect their product to show the safety elements that people were worried about with lithium batteries. Like, is this safe? So they would show like graphs or like graphic designs of the circuitry and stuff to try and give you confidence that this isn't gonna burn up.
Blow
It's not going to blow up your phone or anything. Um, so I think trying to look at your competitors and trying to say, okay, how do I add additional value or additional clarity that makes them comfortable with their purchase is so key. But if you're not spending the time testing and learning, you're not ever going to uncover those things. I know earlier you were telling me about some really cool kind of outside of the box marketing tactics and ways of getting consumers to get engaged with your brands. Anything you want to share with the audience?
Yeah. So one thing that I love doing, I mean, a lot of people talk about how hard it is to get reviews. And the way I look at it is, well, are you doing something that would make people want to give you a review, right? Like, what are you doing to surprise and delight shoppers that would make them want to talk about your brand? And if you frame it in that, then reviews kind of become a natural part of the process, or at least you'll get more reviews than your competitor at a higher frequency. So one of the things that was super successful was for one product that I had where it was supposed to be a 5-pack. So everything was advertised as a 5-pack. But then when they bought it, we actually shipped them on purpose a 6-pack, where we even updated the label on the packaging to like cross out the 5 and put surprise, you got the unannounced 6-pack or whatever the copy was on it. And yeah, like it's like, oh, okay, cool, I just got a bonus. I wasn't expecting this, right? And it's a small thing, but it can make a big difference, especially when it comes time to writing that review. You've just kind of like deposited some goodwill into that shopper's eyes. So now when they're going to write the review, hopefully it's going to be something a little bit more positive. But taking it to the next level, at the time for that product, we also mentioned, we're like, hey, if you happen to leave a review, please don't ruin the surprise for the next shopper, right? So I wasn't asking them to leave a review, but it was kind of like, yeah, if you happen to do it, just, keep it between us that you got the special bonus 6-pack, right? And then I think what that did is actually frame them in the mindset of like, oh yeah, I should actually I should actually write a review on the product. So that really helped to get the review velocity up. And then another really easy tactic that I think a lot of Amazon sellers or even brands in general miss the mark on is just packaging. I feel like a lot of them would be surprised at how little extra you can pay for like a really good retail ready, out of this world unboxing experience. But most sellers are just like, hey, if I can save 15 cents here or there, I'm not necessarily gonna do it. So that's another aspect that I've always kind of made sure where all the products, you want to think like Apple-like packaging, so that that first impression when they get the product, it's like, oh wow, this is something that's super high quality, and less likely that there'll be, even if there's always going to be issues, but if you can make a really good first impression, make that connection, you're less likely to say get that negative review, because you're putting in that goodwill to help kind of like mitigate that if there's an issue that comes up.
Totally agree. I think that, like you said, people are just they're cheap on the packaging price, and they don't want to look at the value of that product perception to the consumer. Like the initial unboxing is the first impression. It's like you can't repeat that first impression that is so valuable. And there's a reason why Apple has chosen to invest so much in their packaging while still keeping the materials, not wasteful, environmentally friendly, but it just feels solid in your hand. It's something you enjoy opening. And I think there's definitely elements of that are missing. One of our clients had developed a product line that was like a gifting type product, and they actually shipped it in like a giftable ready box, with a bow and everything, so that you could just hand it off. And it's those elements that make people really just feel good about what they bought, that they're not as likely to return it. They're more likely to give positive reviews because, like you said earlier, you kind of set their mindset that they want to leave a good review because of that surprise and delight. So totally agree with those things.
I have thought of another cool example too. So selling furniture, I don't know if you have any clients in the furniture category, but it's tough, right? People aren't great in general at assembling things, and the return rate is typically really, really high. So there was one person that I knew, and we were kind of, a lot of it is just like brainstorming and thinking like, what can you do differently? And obviously AI is fantastic for this now. And so he was having an issue with with returns, very high return rate. He made one little change in his instruction manual, and his instruction manual basically just same instruction manual, but like midway through, he had a pack of jelly beans. So now when they're doing the construction, right, and the pack of jelly beans was basically like, hey, have a break, have some jelly beans on us, haha, smiley face, that sort of thing. And so simple, so you wouldn't think much of it, but it dramatically decreased his return rate. Like imagine if IKEA did something like that. Like I feel like a lot of frustration in the world would for IKEA furniture would maybe go down. I don't know, but really cool example of just like thinking outside of the norm on how to differentiate.
And you mentioned return, assembly. That's another thing I think people they undervalue is how easy you make it for them to assemble. Like, are you giving them a QR code to watch a video, which by the way, you can cookie their browser and get to know who's visiting you. But just making it very clear step by step. Don't try and be IKEA, that tries to serve the entire world with just logos, that if you're selling into the US market, have English language instructions that are very clear, concise, and don't leave a lot for misinterpretation. I had to get called over to my 82-year-old neighbor the other day because she bought a cell phone case, and it had like this magnetic attachment to hook up to her, car dashboard, and she didn't know how to figure it out because the logos were very unclear. I mean, I couldn't even rely on the logos. I knew what I needed to do, but she didn't, and the text was too small. So think about who's your audience, and is that something that they can even use? Like, are you saving 5 cents by making this instruction booklet a little smaller, but now you've added frustration to the customer?
And the crazy thing is, this is the kind of stuff that you can test. I mean, Product Pinion or anywhere, really.
Mm-hmm.
Just upload the document and be like, hey, what, open-ended question. Ask 20 people, what do you think of this? How can this be made better? And you'll immediately get like a to-do list of like 5 to 10 things that you could make that so much better, and it's going to solve for you in the long run. You also reminded me of another product example. So another product that I was selling was a pop-up sun tent, right? Great product. It was phenomenal in terms of like
no one could close it, right?
No one could close the bloody thing. I had to kill the product because people just couldn't figure it out. And I did my best on trying to explain it, like fold it like a taco shape, and I even had a picture of a happy taco, had videos, had a QR code on the cover, had all the things. And if they figured out how to do it once, they would have, it would have been fine. But it's very difficult, very difficult. But looking back on that was one of the earlier products that, like, I wish I kept it, to be honest, because the margins were fantastic and it was such a high quality product. But some cases it just there's only so much you can do, I think.
Yeah, no, those are funny. Those are funny examples. And in your case, you did everything right, and the consumer just still, was challenged to get it right. You had some slides that you wanted to share with the audience. If you don't mind, why don't we switch over to that and have you share some things?
Yeah, let's do that.
And just for the audience, this isn't going to be a sales pitch or anything. He's just going to show some examples of some cool things that they've done that I thought this would be really interesting for everybody to see.
Yeah, so something that we did was basically ask over 1,000 shoppers like about their behaviors, like shopping on Amazon, shopping in general, e-commerce, that sort of thing. And we basically asked each, like out of the 1,000 people, it was a general population survey, about 70 questions about their buying habits and that sort of thing. We'll be releasing the whole survey soon enough, although I've been saying that for a little bit. But some of the interesting points that came out, we can share today as well. And some of it may surprise you. And also what we did, I mean, right now I'm just sharing like the kind of big visualization of all the data. This was actually done in GenSpark, which is a super cool tool, kind of fed it the raw data and was able to kind of visualize it in a more interesting way. And one of the questions that we were trying to understand is, besides Amazon, because obviously it was more of an Amazon survey, what's another platform that you shop on? So, Steve, what do you think shoppers would answer to this question? Is it Etsy? Is it TikTok Shop? Or is it Shein, which I can never pronounce?
Do you know the demographic of the audience?
So assume in this case, it's kind of like everyone. So it's kind of like, it wasn't specifically targeted. We can later slice and dice and say, hey, men said this, women said this, but assume it's like basically 50-50 men, women, and pretty much general distribution on demographics.
I mean, I would guess TikTok shops because of the most, popularity of that channel at this moment. Depends on when the question was engaged, but that would be my vote.
Yeah, so fair, and that was kind of my assumption as well too. This survey was done just before the summer as well, so I mean, somewhat recent, but like obviously things can change on a dime. Interestingly enough, it was Etsy, right? So Walmart, if I put up there, kind of makes sense. But Etsy actually had a pretty large large base of people that were shopping there. And to me, I was like surprised, because it's like I personally never bought anything on Etsy. I thought it was all just handcrafted things.
I wonder in this case, because Etsy, we've actually had clients that sell more on Etsy than Amazon. For the right product, Etsy can do phenomenal. But I wonder if the question, and this is where you guys are, experts at trying to form the questions and such, is the question, where do you shop? Maybe is not something they don't think about going to TikTok to shop, because I'm surprised it's like the lowest on the list, but they maybe buy there more than they can, but just it's like spur of the moment impulse purchases more so than like going and browsing and shopping. So that would be my guess, but it'd be interesting to to gather further information around that, because that's a big surprise.
Yeah, no, and I agree. A lot of the survey, when you do the survey, yeah, depending on how the question's worded, it can actually change the results. Something that I'm very interested in doing too is repeating this whole thing next year, and then seeing the change, right? Because then that kind of gives you more of an insight into, not just the absolutes here, but what is the actual the change in market share in this case. And my guess would be that TikTok shop would be much, much higher. But that's a good point too. I didn't realize, like that makes a lot of sense now that you mention it. Like on TikTok shop, it's more just like impulse buy, hey, I'm buying the thing, versus going to an actual channel to actually browse and shop. So that's actually a really good point. The other thing I realized too is Etsy's now open as of, I think we looked it up. I don't remember the date, but I think it was as of 2021 or so, you could actually put anything on Etsy. So it didn't have to be handmade, didn't have to be in the US or whatever it was. It literally could be drop shipped, and it could be sold on Etsy. So, and interesting that you have some clients that sell more on Etsy than Amazon. Okay, so another question. What's more important on an Amazon listing? Is it video? Is it photos? Or is it about the same?
I mean, I would naturally think photos, but the fact that it's about the same is shown there. I'm gonna.
It's like one of those trick questions, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So what was interesting is, product images actually came up. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, but there's a lot of other aspects that were asked too. What was interesting to me on this was just how little people put an importance of video, right? We hear, video is everything. Obviously, you have to have really good videos in the listing. But from a shopper's perspective, I think the video comes after checking the box of, like, obviously price, product images have to look good, reviews have to look good. And then once we check those boxes, then the importance of video might be there to seal the deal. But I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
As a follow-up question, the one thing you might want to ask is have them rank order these, so you can see where it falls in their order of importance, because reviews and price are going to be so impactful that it may skew other results.
And I think actually in this question, I'd have to double check, but I do think we asked them what is the top 3. So they were able to pick 3 out of these guys. I think so. But that makes a lot of sense too, because obviously price is like going to be number 1 for most people.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay, so no surprise, product image is very or extremely important. So obviously tied back to product opinion. If you're not testing those main images, especially, you're putting a lot of money on the table that could be wasted.
And before we move off of main images, one of the things I'm sure you have seen a lot is it could be a great main image, but if it doesn't stand out in the search query, then you're losing out, because you've got to get your eye drawn to that product. And that's oftentimes why we're a big fan of using badges, coupons, Prime exclusive deals, things like draw their attention to that product. But if you can do so with adding colorful elements, let's say it's a supplement with some berries around it or something, a lot of times that really just makes you stand out. And over time, your competitors will start evolving that way too. So you have to constantly be one step ahead of them. And so would you agree with that, and anything else to add on?
Oh yeah, 100,000%. Yeah. So that's what I always say too. And I think a lot of the better creative agencies understand this, but some creative agencies, hey, let's just make a beautiful main image. And what I always say is it really doesn't matter how beautiful your main image is, how pixel perfect it is. If it doesn't break the pattern, if it doesn't stand out versus your competitors, it doesn't matter, right? So that's why with us, one thing that we're really heavy on is doing search simulations. So you don't just do the traditional kind of A/B test, which is like random concept A versus random concept B. What we'll do is first establish a baseline. So run a test with your competitors, even keep the pricing, the number of reviews, and that sort of thing. Like you want to kind of have your closest competitors on this test. See where you end up. What's the click share that you get when you do that baseline? Then the next step is once you have all the research, so you've done some opinion videos, you understand what resonates with people, you get some qualitative feedback on that baseline test as well too, and you're understanding why your competitors are getting the clicks. Then we make the concepts. So now we're not just shooting in the dark. We're creating concepts based on that data. Once we have a few concepts, we do a traditional poll. So that's where we do the A versus B versus C. We take that winner and then we redo that baseline with the new creative. And if you can get a higher click share from your baseline, what you currently have, to the new baseline with the new creative, that's going to translate into more sales on Amazon. And we're getting a ton of really cool case studies coming out by following this sequence. One brand, they spent about $400 in testing, and in less than a week, they added another $19,000 in sales to their product line, which is wild, right? Yeah. So a lot of sellers by default, they're like, oh yeah, I got to spend more on PPC, gotta just spend. And they don't necessarily realize that, no, like just test. Just test your home base, test your main images, and it can unlock a lot of revenue that you're leaving on the table by not testing.
It's not uncommon, for us to see product page optimizations lead to 50% growth or higher in many cases, because if you think about it, it's like a compounded growth. How do I increase my click through rate? Now that's more traffic. Then how do I increase that conversion rate? If you take your conversion rate from 10% to 15%, you've basically increased your sales by 50%. It's like
it's compound.
It's all compounded, and every element matters. So how am I, like, look at it? Okay, like if I'm on the product detail page or on the search result page, what are the factors that go into that? Price, product title, main image, right? Then once I get into the and how that stands out, of course, to competitors on that search query. And then when they get into the listing, what are the elements that are going to cause them to convert more highly? And of course, you've got the organic and paid traffic generation that goes into it as well. But all of those things, when you get the traffic there, if you can convert more people because of these optimization elements, it really can make meaningful differences in your sales and your market share capture, and it can be done so much more profitably than doubling your ad spend, for example.
Oh, absolutely. We have another case study that I'm really excited to get out ASAP, where it was a client that just started using us for 2 months, and they were pretty skeptical because they're like, oh yeah, we've been testing, we've been using manager experiments, that sort of thing, which they should be, which is great. And so with just about 2 months of doing this rapid testing, using our sequencer strategy of the main image, across 3 products, they were able to add $300,000 in sales for the year. So 2 months worth of testing of 3 products, they added $300,000 revenue. Awesome. Without adding new products, not spending a dime more on PPC. And that doesn't even account for, they have a pretty giftable item. So that 300,000 mark doesn't even account for the increase that they'll get during the holiday season as well too. That's just like a flat, hey, 12 months, figure. So pretty incredible results with that one. And my bet is that the actual dollar amount is going to be higher than that 300,000. So I'm kind of waiting to see how it shapes up before we release it as a formal case study.
Very cool. Any on those last two examples you shared, any trends, anything that the audience would want to hear as far as like what were the findings that were so dramatically better?
Yeah, so I mean, it is very niche specific in general, right? So for example, in the first case study, it was a pillow, and all of the pillows were like lying kind of lengthwise. And then there was one bestseller that was kind of standing upright, vertical. So what did we do? We made ours vertical as well, but then we also added like a packaging element. We put orthopedic approved on it, which again, from the Pinion videos, everyone was saying like, hey, that's what resonates with me. It has to be orthopedic approved. And in our old main image, we didn't even have that anywhere to be found. It was in the title, but people are visual. They want to see that really, really quick. With the other product, it was also just adding, I mean, and this is common, it's nothing new, right? So it was somewhat of a giftable product. They just added the packaging behind it. That was the main thing. They also showed off the accessories a little bit better, but that in of itself caused the click-through rate to go sky high. Now, there is an interesting thing that everyone can do, and I don't care if your product isn't giftable or not, because I've seen this firsthand for the most ridiculous products. We call it to festify your listing. So all you do, it's so simple. Whatever your main image is, you add a little element of Christmas or the holidays to it. So might be a little bow, might be a little decoration of an ornament, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Add something that like wouldn't typically be there. And I can almost guarantee your clicks will go up. We had one agency that implemented it, and they were seeing anywhere from 20 to 35% increase in clicks. And a lot of those clicks came on products that you wouldn't even think as gifts. So it doesn't matter if you sell, like whatever you sell, doesn't matter. People are in the mind space of buying more, and people resonate with anything holiday related.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable. I am in the bow example, for example, for Christmas, you're hitting two birds with one stone. Essentially, you're attracting the colorful element while also resonating with the consumer and getting them to think, oh, this is a good gift item. Psychologically, now I'm going to buy more because I'm not going to just buy it for myself. I'm going to buy it for others. And the packaging and the background and stuff, I'm a big fan of that. And a lot of times you're trying to figure out like how to make that color pop happen, but a lot of times it just seems kind of forced. Like, do I really need to see like vegetables all around my product and stuff? It works, but I'd rather see it if I can do the same thing by just incorporating a colorful box and making sure the clients actually implement a colorful, giftable box that they now have as a differentiator. You've added the color pop. You've made it feel more substantial, in my opinion. It feels like you're getting more for your value, even though it's just the product sitting in front of its packaging, perhaps. And you're showing that it's giftable and just something that you have more confidence in. I don't know how many times I've gotten a product from Amazon and it comes in a little shrink wrapped bag or something, and I open it and it just does not feel good. It definitely wouldn't feel good as a gift. So if you can solve for those two things, I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, and the interesting part with that second case study example is their packaging was world class. They just didn't show it off. So it was already there. Like in some cases, you can, fudge the packaging slightly to make it look a little bit more better than what they get in real life. And usually that's okay. It doesn't cause much friction when the customer gets it. But also with that being said, you don't want to show this beautiful packaging in your main image and then ship it in that little shrink wrap
Yeah.
plastic, then you get into some, instead of surprise and delight, you're just like you're surprising and upsetting, right? So you don't want to get into that side of it.
I do think
Yeah.
that adding little elements to your packaging, I think, is sometimes okay. So, for example, on that pillow, you added that, what was it?
Like a ribbon thing, yeah, like a
Approved or
cardboard
something.
wrap, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that to me, that's not something the consumer is gonna
Yeah.
miss out on, but you're just showing an added element that you just happen to not deploy when you created the packaging. And I think that as long as it's when they get it,
Reasonable.
they still have the same feel, then I think that works.
Yeah. And just also to touch on that Festify bit, you'll also see and watch this in the next holiday season, you'll see the big brands do this. So Procter and Gamble, Nivea, you name it, they'll all of their listings will become Festified. And they do it because it works. And they'll be doing it on, I mean, a lot of their products obviously are giftable, but you'll see they'll do it on anything and everything because they know that they're going to get the click. What's that?
Shampoos.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Body wash, shampoo, razors. I had a bunch of examples from last year where literally it was like on the most, mundane things that you wouldn't necessarily give. They'll do it because they want the click, right? Of course.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love learning from other, really big brands that have unlimited funds and seeing like why are they deploying it, and it's funny to see some of the items that you gather from them are really good learnings, and some of them are like, how can they be this big with doing so many things wrong?
Well, and the funny thing is too, like some of their, so for example, they were using AI to generate the bows and stuff, right? And it looked terrible. Like if you actually looked at these things, they didn't look like bows. It was just this mess of a thing that was literally some, whoever threw it on there. But they don't care because it's making the clicks. And something that we do have inside of Product Pinion is the ability to create AI assets in layers. So right now, for example, you ask ChatGPT, hey, add the bow. It can do it, but it might change your product entirely, and it might position the bow kind of strangely, that sort of thing. What you can do with us, and it's something that we've actually, it's a whole other conversation, but we've actually applied for a patent on it where basically we can actually generate AI pieces in layers. So you ask it to generate the bow. Now that bow is a separate layer to your product, doesn't touch your product, in terms of changing it, but you can now position that bow and put it which way. And guess what? It looks 1,000 times better than what Procter and Gamble are doing, at least what they did last year. So we'll see if they've upped their game this year too.
And to your point about like ChatGPT's output, a lot of times you'll give it instruction like, oh, just tweak it this way, like move that bow, a little bit further to the left or whatever, and it just recreates the whole image again.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not what I wanted. I just wanted you to make that one simple change. So if you put it in layers, you have that ability to simply move things around. I think that's definitely a lot more valuable for an AI use on a product where that main product you want to remain untouched.
And something we're doing now is we'll use Nano Banana because obviously everyone is all about the Nano Banana. But we'll do the layer thing, and then if it doesn't look perfect, then you send that composition to Nano Banana, and then it'll actually just redraw it, and it does a better job of not touching the product, but then also making that bow look more lifelike, like it's actually on the packaging and that sort of thing. If you really want to go for that completely, polished look, so that's something that we're launching soon as well.
Very cool. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Keep going with your slides.
Yeah. Well, we can go through. Yeah, these. I think those were the major couple questions. But something else that was super important was having like the 360 views on the listing. A lot of shoppers like specifically call that out. I just want to see what it looks like, and also having comparison. So this was interesting to me because Amazon Basics and their brands, they do this all the time where, like in this case, I think this is literally a book, and they're showing just the dimensions of the book just on a torso, just to give you a feel for how big it is. So, as traditionally you wouldn't think that this is important. You wouldn't necessarily, want to show you the size of a book in that way. But it's something that shoppers really do resonate with. And if it's something that Amazon does almost in every of their listings, then it's something to take notice, and it might be something that you want to do as well.
Yeah, I like both of those. I think that when I look at 360-degree images, I don't think it's as much about the 360 spinning function as just making sure they can see all elements of it. And I like to call it the touchy-feely approach. Like, how do you give the consumer this touchy-feely experience without them actually physically touching the product? So that could be video, it could be 360-degree images, it could be multiple angles of the product to make sure, like, especially if you're buying like let's say a technical item like a receiver, you're not going to want to just see the front of it. You need to see the back, see all the ports and connections that are available to it, and really just think about, what's most important to that customer, make a good purchasing decision. And size comparisons, I think it's really important. What I like to do is show them like Anchor does, where it's like natural, like in relation to other items.
Here's
like
a cup of coffee, and here's my charger. Yeah,
exactly. But sizing and size charts also are really important too. You got to make sure that you're answering every question and not having any uncertainty. Like, is this going to fit? I need it tomorrow. I can't take a risk. I need to make sure that it's the right product, the right size, and so forth. So
100%. Yeah. And even if it's something like you wouldn't expect, like a book, show it off. Doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah.
So other things that shoppers mentioned, and these make sense intuitively, but it might not be so, what I've always liked to say is common sense isn't common. So even though we know these things, if we actually look at our Amazon listings, we might be missing a few of these. So size comparisons, the views, real usage. So obviously like lifestyle shots, clear dimensions, natural lighting. And actually a lot of shoppers said that they were turned off by obviously AI generated images. So something to note as well. I feel like that's going to be less of an issue, especially today, like pretty much indistinguishable at this point is my feeling.
The clear dimensions, I think, that's an important element because and not just the size. Like I'll give you an example. Here we live in Texas. Texas has occasionally like tornadoes and stuff we got to be prepared for. So I bought this mount for my Cybertruck to screw an antenna, a ham radio antenna on. And I was looking for an adapter that would, to work with it. And none of them showed the size of like the hole where the antenna mounts to verify that it's the right size for my needs. Almost all of them would just show the size of the overall, adapter, but they wouldn't show the details I really needed to know. And I think that having all of the things that are most important to that customer, I mean, if it's a simple product, yeah, maybe height, width, and depth is fine. But if there's elements that are like, it needs to work with something else, you've got to make sure that all of those elements are also clear on how big they are and what it works with. Just make it easy.
And you just reminded me of something too that I mean, it's just a random side example, but with so my main product category is travel. So during COVID, when like nobody was traveling, sales went to zero. But recently I got the Tesla at that time it was recent. And I was like, there's not a lot of accessories for it. There's not a lot of cool things. One of the products that I actually did really well with during COVID was just a center console cover, which again, commodity, but I was trying to think, how do I differentiate? So all I did was shove an RFID sticker on the underside of this center console cover. And now all of a sudden my center console was like app enabled. So you could actually just touch your center console with your phone. You could launch Spotify. You could make it do whatever action you wanted when it touched that RFID sticker. So just another random cool example of cost me nothing. It was like 20 cents extra for the sticker. I sold my version probably at $5 plus extra, and it actually became one of the better sellers just because of that differentiator, at least until it got copied. But hey, I made some money in the meantime.
Even if it's one of those things that people don't use a lot, it's the cool factor you're adding to it. Like I'm a geek. I love features like that. So I'm the one that actually would use it, but there's a lot of people that they might find it compelling and then say, I just found myself never using it.
But they bought it because
What's that?
No, I was gonna say, yeah, they bought it just because, like, one of the images was like touch enabled center console cover, and it's just, oh, that's cool. I'm just gonna buy it because it's cool, right? That's it. You're right. People buy.
Exactly.
People are irrational. They buy not because of logical reasons. That's for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Did you have any other slides to share? Is this?
Yeah. We can do, okay, we'll do one more because I know we're hitting at time here, but what social platform refers the most product discovery on Amazon? So they find a product and then they're most likely to buy on Amazon afterwards.
I would guess YouTube.
Oh, actually, yeah, right on. So a lot of people would still go back to the Instagram for discovery, for TikTok Shop for discovery. But yeah, YouTube actually drives the most, or at least according to our sample size, drives the most traffic to Amazon. So just another tidbit of what brands might want to look to optimize for when they're putting content out there.
Awesome. No, that's really, really good stuff. I like that. And you said you're going to be publishing this out, in the near future, right?
Yeah, so we'll have the whole report ready to go. The game plan is before the holiday season starts. So I mean, in the next couple weeks or so. So yeah, we'll definitely have something that we'll give away just to be able to use some of the data and hopefully optimize the listings before the holiday season too.
Awesome. Well, why don't you tell the audience how they can reach out to you?
Yeah, so
on LinkedIn.
Yeah, totally. So just Matt Kostan on LinkedIn. You can look me up there. I might do some posts where you have to comment, and whatever to get some details. But that's how LinkedIn goes. Otherwise, you can do a free trial at productpinion.com. You can actually just ask 20 shoppers any question for free. And also always happy to chat and talk shop. My direct email is matt@productpinion.com as well.
Awesome. Well, this is really valuable, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us. I think there was a lot of great takeaways that people can learn from.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Thanks everybody for joining the Prosperous Sellers Podcast. As you know, you can always reach me at primeguidance.com. I'd love to have a free introductory call with anybody that wants to speak with me. So thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Cheers.